Hey Jacob, how's it going? We are not live. We wanted to be live. We're sorry we're not live, but this is just the way things worked out. And I just really needed to get your reaction because yesterday we had kind of a bombshell news day with now the quarantine. First they said 2 weeks, just 15 days, just 2 weeks. You guys, why are you complaining? It's not that big of a deal. Just suck it up, be adults. You're just being selfish, silly little teenagers. And then it was like, no, it needs to be a whole month. Now it's until April 30th, and then we got it until April 30th. Then it's like, no, now it's May 15th. Now it's May 15th. But stop complaining. You're just complaining. Why are you complaining so much? And now it's like, what is it? Of August now for the next 3 months now LA is going to be shut down. So what, you live in LA. I thankfully escaped, and I'm patting myself on the back right now for having escaped. But what was your reaction when you saw this? I know you've been unhappy, but
Oh yeah, no, I have been increasingly unhappy and disappointed because it is just insane. Like you said, it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve, right? That's what we heard. It was 15 days, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. We heard this over and over again. And then it got extended. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think Comrade Garcetti was one of the first mayors to extend it. I could be wrong about that. He might have worked with Newsom to do that, or as I like to call him, Governor Nuisance. But with everything, this is just ridiculous. And then he started, and see, I hate to say this, but I was warning people. I'm like, they're telling us 2 weeks, but it's gonna extend. And I know you were too. You and I have pretty much been consistent. Like, I was okay with requesting that businesses ask people to wear masks. I was okay with that. And I was okay with even saying people social distance, and if you can work from home, work from home. All that was fine. But when they started to do this lockdown stuff, I was like, oh no, this is dangerous. And I actually got into it. People may remember this. I guess he unfollowed me finally, but there's this account called Classical Conservative. And he was saying, this is totally constitutional. And I would say, okay, cite the Constitution and I will change my mind. And of course, they can't. There's nowhere in the Constitution that the Bill of Rights gets suspended during a pandemic. And so I really thought this was going in a bad direction, and it has. Just, you give them an inch and they take a mile. And one thing that people always want to point out is, because they tell us who are basically saying, oh, well, it hasn't been as bad as some flu seasons. They're like, you can't do that. But then they'll say, oh, but what about the Spanish flu? One thing they forgot, the Spanish flu put countries on lockdown, including the United States. People in the United States, especially in San Francisco, where it was a big hotbed, were required to wear masks. Guess what happened? People still died from the Spanish flu, even though there was a lockdown and a mask. So to me, even with their own example, it proves the ineffectiveness of social distancing and quarantines and whatnot. But that's just kind of my opinion, that we lost a big portion of the globe with the Spanish flu. And can I say it, there's a YouTuber who calls it the My Sharona Cyrus. With this, we're nowhere even near any of those numbers.
So I don't actually have a lot of understanding of the Spanish flu or of pandemics throughout history. All I can see is what's happening right now. Is I do have an understanding of how historically we've lost rights over stuff like that, over giving up freedom for security. This is something that I am very familiar with throughout history. This is something that, we're scared of X. So if even as recent as 9/11, we got scared after 9/11, and now, we have the TSA as a permanent part of airports now. Even though the TSA is a disastrous organization, the success rate of their organization is not clear. It's mediocre at best, shall we say, and all they do is end up making it more difficult to ride on a plane. And we haven't had another 9/11, but who's to say that we still wouldn't have had like, the TSA is not necessarily the solution to preventing 9/11s from happening. It's not going to fix things. It just took more freedoms away and allowed for people to have basically a search and seizure of their property without due process, which is what we're seeing now. And that's what I'm really frustrated with. We're taking away people's due process, and we're just saying, you are all criminals for needing to go to work and for needing to make money and needing to pay your bills and needing to, buy food and stuff like that. You are all automatically criminals for wanting those things. And if you go out and try to do those things that you need to do to survive, then we are going to put you in jail. And I guess that's my biggest frustration, but set aside, I get a little frustrated with kind of focusing on the history and all of that. Like, I can only deal with what's happening right now, and what's happening right now is they're taking our rights away. And so I don't know what your reaction to that's just kind of my take on it. My very uneducated take on it right now.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, you think about even like these organizations like the DEA and the ATF, which are redundant organizations. We should, you look at how they reacted to things like Ruby Ridge or the siege at Waco and things like that. And I don't mean to say this to I just watched the Waco miniseries, so it's fresh in my mind. Yeah. But with that in mind, like, yes, they're always coming up with new ways to invent ways to slowly take away our rights in the name of security. And I know I sound people are like, Jacob, I thought you weren't a libertarian. I thought you were a conservative. And in my humble opinion, the conservatives who kind of rose up in this security over freedom, I consider them neocons. I don't think of them as traditional conservatives. I consider myself one. I believe more. More in line with Thomas Sowell, Milton Friedman on economics and yada yada yada. But I think that anytime something like, I guarantee you, there is going to be either a government organization, another bureaucratic body formed out of this, or another one is going to get, or one that already exists is going to get expanded. It's going to be one of those. We're going to see the Health and Human Services or the CDC or the FDA even get way more authority than they were ever supposed to be. And quite frankly, I see why the CDC needs to exist, because we need, they help, they do protect citizens. But the Health and Human Services, we don't need them. I mean, we don't. I think that again, another redundant organization. So, yeah. But I guarantee you, from this, we're going to see financial benefits for those organizations, and their authority is going to be expanded. Maybe even for the Surgeon General himself or herself, depending on who's next. But I'm counting down my days where we hear this.
So here's another one of my big problems, and this is a great thing to talk about with you, because one of your kind of pet issues is elites versus the regular guy, that whole dynamic. And one thing that I see is a lot of people basically saying, well, you're not allowed to talk about this, or you're not allowed to have an opinion on this because you don't have an education. Your education, you have a bachelor's degree in political science, but that doesn't mean anything. You don't know what you're talking about. You have this, you have that. Even if you don't have a bachelor's degree, you just have a high school diploma. But you're not allowed to talk about this. We here in the elites, who are talking heads, who are the guys with the radio hosts or the podcast hosts or the people on TV, they're the only ones that can have an opinion on any of these things, while those of us who are little people are not supposed to have opinions on these. Those of us who don't have an extensive background in historical knowledge, we're not allowed to talk about these things. I think that that's a huge problem, because this actually is one of this is actually almost one of the primary issues that has been seen with Christianity throughout the years, is people saying, oh no, you can't read the Bible, only the priests can know what's in there. You're just a little person, we'll tell you what's in that book. And it's the same thing with the Constitution. You don't know what your rights are. You can't know whether your rights can be suspended or not. We'll tell you when you can have those rights. I know that's in the Constitution. Yeah, that due process and freedom of speech, whatever it is, that's all in the Constitution. But you will tell you when you can have those rights. We're the ones who know better. We're the ones who know best. And that's my biggest problem. We have so many people that are just deciding on behalf of everybody else. We're going to make decisions from in Sacramento or from in Washington, D.C. based on what works for us here. And then we're going to broad brush everybody else with the same deal. And so that's again one of my biggest
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your last question. You blinked out
Oh
for a
no,
second.
I was just saying that that the elites telling the little people what they can and can't do, or what they can and can't say, or whether they can or can't have opinions on certain things without, being referred to as stupid, or, you know, just not allowing us to speak on behalf of our own rights at this point is what my frustration is.
Oh yeah, it's a big frustration to me too, because a lot of people forget that there's this thing that the elites don't have, and it's called common sense. And one thing people forget about the scientists and doctors and medical professionals is science isn't built on consensus. It's built on data and facts and study. And so whenever people say there is a consensus, I'm like, well, so what? Scientists used to have a consensus that frogs evolved from mud, that flies evolved from raw meat. We all studied this in science, right? Until Sir Francis Bacon came along and proved the spontaneous evolution theory to be false. So no, science isn't built on consensus. And so whenever I hear people say, well, a certain amount of scientists say this, I'm like, well, so what? There's a certain amount of scientists that don't say that are being silenced by the highfalutin people. So you have to be able to listen to all sides and then make your decision from there. And for me, I find it a little suspicious that all of these doctors and scientists who are coming on CNN and even Fox are all saying the same thing. They're not having any voices of dissent. And they had to some credit though, they I believe Rand Paul, who is a doctor, by the way. I know there are people saying they had Rand Paul on to talk about the coronavirus. He's not a doctor. Like, okay, yeah, he's a certain type of doctor. He's obviously, but he was a medical doctor, as a matter of fact, so he would know something about this. And he was giving a different opinion, and they're like, oh, he's going against Dr. Fauci or Fauci or whatever his name is. And I'm like, so what? Let them debate, and then the data and the facts will prove who's right. And right now, as we see the curve flatten after the 2-week notice, but we're still continuing these massive lockdowns in certain states. I think that tells me that they want these elite scientists to have all the same opinion. And these scientists are, like I said, they lack a little bit of common sense. So right now, I believe some of them are parroting what they're told to say, because they think they can get some sort of grants or a position of power, but then they're going to look like they have egg on their face, which is what happened, with Art Laffer, the economist. I don't even know why people still have him on, because he flat out said, I watched the show where he said the 2007 crash is not going to happen. And lo and behold, it happened. And so, like, I'll see him on programs and I'm like, why are people having this guy on? And for once I was happy that Bill Maher made fun of a conservative, because Bill Maher had him on and just ripped him to shreds. Of course, Bill Maher tried to blame Reagan. I don't know why. But he's not your friend, conservatives. But anyway, that's my kind of take on this. Is we just because there's a consensus with scientists does not mean there's a consensus with scientific data.
Correct, and that's another frustration. This is just an episode of my frustrations, basically. But it's just so frustrating that people are just so willing to. Oh, just let the experts tell us what we have to do. Just let the experts. It's funny when I was, at the very bottom of the totem pole, in the workplace, I used to think, well, my bosses all know best. And then you get into management and you're just kind of like, it's not that complicated.
Right.
So I don't know. It's just like the experts really aren't any, like, they don't have this special level of intelligence that's greater than yours. They just have more education. They just have more data to work with than you do. But that doesn't mean that they're necessarily smarter than you, or that they necessarily know what's best for you, because they don't know you. The experts in Washington, D.C. don't know and don't care that there are 0 coronavirus cases in my county. They don't know and they don't care that most of the businesses, the small businesses in my area, may not be able to come back again after this.
Mm.
And I would imagine that after 3 months of lockdown, there's going to be a lot of LA restaurants and a lot of LA small businesses that were kind of the highlight of people's lives to be able to go and visit are not going to be there anymore, because who can do business when they're shut down for half the year? So, just to kind of wrap things up, what is your prediction of what LA is going to look like at the end of this 3 month lockdown?
I actually don't think it's going to last 3 months. I could be wrong about this one, but I think that we're going to see more defiance. I mean, just today we saw Garcetti kind of loosen the restrictions on beaches today. He still is,
Mm,
for some reason, making people wear a mask, and he's telling them they can't sit down, all this ridiculous stuff. But
yeah.
that is a far cry from no one at the beach ever. You hate the beaches. You're getting sleepy. So I honestly think that we'll see more defiance of that nature. We're going to see more people say no, and I'm counting down the days. It'll probably happen either this month or in June or early June, where there's going to be a restaurant that's going to open that is and it's just going to say no. And I honestly believe, and that person will get fined and arrested. There'll be a public outcry, which will lead to more loosening, because it right now we're seeing this thing happen where like people like Cuomo and Lightfoot, mayor of Chicago, they're trying to
Mhm.
really desperately, and what's his name, De Blasio, mayor of New York, he blamed the Jews for everything, as I guess is that's like a rite of passage for New York mayors. And so
Apparently.
yeah, apparently. So we're going to see, but people are starting to fight back now because they're taking it too far. And one of the reasons Lori Lightfoot was elected in Chicago was she ran on kind of an anti-corruption, even elitist. She's like,
Mhm.
I'm a socialist, but I'm not. I'm a hardworking socialist, and then, which of course we all know, who was pushing socialism. It wasn't the working people. It was the elite people paying the working people, paying some of the
Exactly.
working people to gin up dissension. And so I think we're going to see, but you run out of other people's money eventually, which is what happened in Texas, which is what
Mhm.
happened in Florida. And fortunately, there's Republican governors there, and they're opening those states back up. And so I think we're going to see more pushback that way. And I think soon in LA we'll hear about a restaurant that opened, and the people will be angry because they got arrested, and then that's going to lead to a domino effect. I honestly believe that that's where we're headed, and we're going to probably open up early June, I think, at the latest. Now, I could be wrong. Garcetti could be an even stupider man than I think he is,
Mhm.
and if he forces this lockdown through August, I don't think he's going to get reelected. That doesn't mean that another Democrat won't get elected, but I think he'll be done. That's my honest prediction. So.
Mhm. Well, I look forward to finding out what your dishonest predictions are going forward.
My
um,
dishonest is a
I
Republican.
I
It's a
don't disagree with
Republican
you.
sweep. That's my dishonest prediction.
Yes. I do think, like, we've seen now. Oh gosh, old Gavin Newsom actually, and he's now allowing his company to open up so that he can prevent him from moving over to Texas. And so we are seeing these weak-kneed Democrats are like, oh my gosh, don't threaten us, don't take the money away from us, we want the money. So I don't think that your prediction is out merit, because we're already seeing Democrats giving in when the guys with the big purse strings start threatening to leave. Then you know that there's going to be a problem. So I look forward to seeing what kind of what we're in store for in the next coming months, because I'm pissed. I'm like, my whole summer plans, everything has been destroyed, and I think a lot of people's plans have, and people are mad. People are. I think it's. I think there's an underestimation of how just utterly frustrated, angry, depressed people are. Like, it's out of it's beyond what I even expected. I did not expect things to get this bad, even though I'm always like the doom and gloom person. I'm always the one saying that this is bad, whatever it is, it's automatically bad, and then it gets even worse than I think. But I appreciate you just jumping on with me today, Jacob.
Oh
I'll
yeah.
hopefully get this up in the next 20 minutes to an hour. We'll see. We'll see how fast my processing speed on my computer. much for coming on. I will link all the links to your social media below. And real quick, I got to plug your book. It's, oh gosh, what's the full title? I only remember the All Good Things part.
It's the Seven Royals, All Good Things. It's the first in a trilogy. The second book is almost complete.
Ooh, I'm very excited. So right now, Jacob actually gifted that book to me last year, his first book, and I started reading it, and then life happened and I didn't finish it. And now that I'm bored and running around looking for things to do, I was like, I'm going to finish Jacob's book. So now I'm going to finish Jacob's book, and then hopefully I'll have a book review up on my YouTube site afterwards, and you guys will be able to I'll have the link in the description so you guys can pick up a copy over on Amazon. But I was really excited because I got to the part where it's like there's like the moon shines and you can see the scars on the guy's body, and I was like, oh, this is cool. Jacob knows how to write. So I highly recommend everybody go and pick up a copy of Jacob's book. Again, the link will be in the description below. So like this video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell so you get notifications, because all these videos are just coming out like crazy, and I will talk to you guys on the next video. All right.